Hey guys, if you like sports and you're a fan of Michael Franzese, the most famous mob boss on YouTube, then you're going to love what we have planned. In a once-in-a-lifetime event, join us in the $2 Sports Club for an uncensored interview with the Mafia Don himself, where you get to ask the questions. That's right, any question you want. So right now you're probably thinking, what the heck is the $2 Sports Club? Well, the $2 Sports Club is the hottest thing on the internet right now, with uncut live interviews from some of your favorite stars of sports and culture, articles and videos from some of the hottest up-and-coming writers in sports, and special deals offered to our members that they can't get anywhere else. Now, if you love sports and you love to be in the know, the $2 Sports Club is the place to be. And today, we've got some breaking news. Along with all the amazing content that I just talked about, the $2 Sports Club just signed me, the sports trader, to provide exclusive seminars on predictive sports analytics. I normally charge up to $5,000 for one of my talks, but if you join the $2 Sports Club today, you get those seminars for free, along with all the other great content that I was talking about, including that once-in-a-lifetime interview with Michael Franzese. And that's right, it's only $2. Join today by clicking the link and becoming a charter member today. What are you waiting for? Click the link. And just like that, we are live streaming to you via the internet. We could say satellite, but that would be a lie. My name is John Todora. They call me the Sports Trader. And over here to my that guy right over here to my left, that is Lance Fernandez. They call him the Sports Nerd. And together, we do something called the What's on Sports podcast. We bring it to you live every Tuesday and Thursday, where we talk about some of your favorite sports. Before we dive in too deep, hey Lance, how the hell are you?
Hey, John. Oh, hope you're doing well. Yeah. Seems like all NFL teams right now seem to have their own like Thor hammer, like the one at your back, because they are starting to like crunch their payroll already. You know, they have redacted the salary cap for 2021 because of COVID, and sadly, there have been a lot of players that have been affected by the salary cap crunch, and we are starting to feel that effect. So if April is tax season in the United States, March is like teams are like crunching in their taxes for their 2021 season.
Yeah, some big moves definitely happening in the NFL. We're going to talk about a lot of that, what's going on later on. We're going to talk about how the Jets are suddenly getting called for Sam Darnold. We're also going to talk about some of the top safeties that are available in free agency this year. And then we're going to go into the reasons why your team, your favorite team, should not, and I repeat, should not spend big money in free agency. And it's all backed up by some incredibly interesting data. But before we go any further, I do want to say real quick, guys, if you're a fan of the show, if you're a fan of sports, if you like what we're doing here, go over to the whatsonsports.com. And today you can join the $2 Sports Club. So what is the $2 Sports Club? It's innovative. It's fun. It's super exciting. You get to go over there right now. And just for $2 a month, you get access to all of our backdoor content, all the insider information. We're talking about information that can help you actually make some money too, because there's gambling information, there's fantasy information, and lots of cool stuff just like that in there, including some really awesome stuff like live seminars with some sports trading gurus, some gambling gurus, and of course, my new book is over there as well. Normally, the book is like $15, but if you join the $2 Sports Club today, you get to read my new book, Zero Correlation Investing: The Score Metric Secret. It's the tried and true method about how you could be a sports trader today and start taking some of the excess income that you have, some of the money that you've been investing in other places. You can see it's a downturn in the market right now. There's no time better than right now than diversify your investments. Go over to the What's on Sports store today, right now. Sorry, go over to whatsonsports.com today and right now join the $2 Sports Club so you get access to the book. So before we go into anything too much here, I know we have some breaking news that we love to talk about. breaking news, things that are happening all around the world, all around the country, and Lance loves to bring it out for us. Lance, do you have some quick fire news for us today to start the show?
Okay, so some quick fire news, John. So there has been like a policy or like a proposal among NFL owners wherein instead of having an onside kick for, of course, the kicking team, they can rather give one 4th and 15
Oh yeah.
situation for that team. So I'm not sure if it has passed the voting already, but it seems like owners are not adept with that rule, where instead of an onside kick, the kicking team will be given a 15-yard like opportunity to cover and essentially make a first down. So what will be your take on that, John?
Well, this was discussed last year, and I don't know that it's so. I believe the way the ruling is set up, I believe right now they kick off at the 40. And if you were to take this opportunity, you would go back to the 30-yard line. And correct me if I'm wrong here, you'd go back to the 30-yard line. You would get one play, and it would be basically a 4th and 15. So you have an opportunity to make 15 yards. If you can make the 15 yards, you can continue. I think I'd have to see it in motion. To be honest with you, I'd like to have the opportunity for both. I think it'd be cool to be able to do both. I do like the onside kick. The onside kicks are harder now because they've changed the rules, so it is much harder for teams to actually get an onside kick. I don't know the actual data behind it either, the percentages between getting an onside kick and the percentages of making a 4th and 15. I would assume that making a 4th and 15 would be a little easier, and that's why they want to do it. So I'm all for anything that makes the game more interesting, more fun, and more exciting. This would put an emphasis on defenses. I will say that. A lot of teams right now are leaning strictly on offenses, but you have to be able to have a defense and a pass rush that could stop a team from getting 15 yards. It would also make teams really, really keep that one play in their pocket that would make them like, hey, listen, I got to save this 15-yard play because I can use this in place of my onside kick later on in the game in a close game. So it'd be interesting strategy. I'd love to see it in play, even if it's just for a season or maybe a preseason, so we can see how it would work out.
Yeah, I believe that is an interesting move by the NFL. So you always have that element of surprise with you, which makes the game even more exciting and watchable. So the 4th and 15 situation, if granted, teams will be given a maximum of 2 opportunities to employ a 4th and 15 per game. So it's up to them. It's in their discretion whether they do it in the first quarter or towards the end of the game. So wherever they see it fit, if allowed by the owners, it would be a fantastic way to just keep the mystery within the game, especially when they start to employ it.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, we are accepting all sorts of chats today. So if you guys want to leave a chat, leave a question, we'll be happy to answer your sports question in lieu of not having a phone. You guys can leave your chats whenever you want to. We do have a quick chat out there from Silent Hoops, who's congratulating us on having 100 subs. Hopefully someday this page will be noticed. Listen, I didn't even know we had 100 subs. I don't even pay attention to that, but that's very interesting. 100 people actually like us, Lance. Now with that in mind, there are about 350 million people just in the U.S., so we have a long way to go in order for anyone to know we're here. But hey, Silent Hoops, we do appreciate that. Well, we got some more questions coming in. We'll get to your questions in just a second. Lance, let's go to the next part of our quick fire news real quick.
Okay, so next part of our quick fire news, we go to a sad news, apparently. So you do remember Kellen Winslow II, you know? So
yeah, I saw this.
He was just sentenced to 14 years of for sex crimes. So it's another NFL life wasted down the drain because of, avoidable circumstances. So it's just a sad note to see one of the he did have some good years in the NFL, like with the Cleveland Browns, and it's just very unfortunate to see him go this way.
Yeah, you see this, and I don't know if you read the details or not, but apparently there's 5 different women that have accused him of different things, and one's even a homeless woman, which is, the whole thing's reprehensible. Men are stronger than women. We should never use that strength to overpower a woman. He's an NFL football player, at least a former NFL football player, which means he's probably stronger than the average man. There's really no reason for it. I hope he gets every one of those 14 years and he serves them all, especially if he's found guilty of all of this, which I guess he has at this point. If he did it, he should go away. Kellen Winslow Jr. has always had a little something wrong with him. There's always been a screw loose inside that guy's head. I remember interviews of him back when he was at the University of Miami thinking, wow, this guy's a little intense. So, look, like I said, I would never condone something like that. I think women should be protected by all means. I know there is a new wave out there of like, oh, we're all equal. But the reality of it is, in my world, and I think in everyone's world, it should remain the same. Women are a weaker species, and we should not take advantage of them with our strength, nor should we ever endorse someone to do that. So 14 years is probably not enough for Kellen Winslow Jr.
Yeah, I do agree that, first things first, he does deserve this kind of punishment. There's no way going around it. The 14 years with 5 different women, I believe that he came out too lightly with the sentence, though. So, especially that it was 5 women involved, and it's just 14 years. So that's one contention that I have with his case, with his sentence. But still, he should serve this 14 years without any parole, without any reprimand whatsoever, because he does deserve to serve that long, if not longer, for all the transgressions that he did. And it's just unfortunate to see another NFL player, as always, sports figures are being looked up to, and then we see people like this, go down the drain. So it's a sad reality that happens.
Look, when you look at something like this, in my personal opinion, I think that the moment that you do something like this and it's proven that you've done it, and I'm not talking about like so we oftentimes hear these allegations that they're unproven, unfounded, there's no evidence. If there's something that way that you can prove this happened, that apparently there are 5 different circumstances here, I think every circumstance should be a 10-year minimum. And I think there should be no parole. There's only one way to stop people, and that's by having the proper type of punishment in place. So as far as I'm concerned, somebody like Kellen Winslow Jr. has done this 5 different times to 5 different women, one of which, I mean, not that it makes it, I don't know if it makes it any worse. To me, it seems even worse because she seems like a little more helpless. One's a homeless woman. Well, for goodness sakes, that should be 50 years at least. His life should be over, in my opinion. Now, I know that puts a burden on society financially to keep someone like that put away, but he's obviously a danger to society, and he's a danger to women, and that should be something, in my opinion, that should be taken care of. In my opinion, every woman is somebody's mother, is somebody's sister, is somebody's wife, is somebody's girlfriend, and they should be taken care of in that fashion. And that's how I've always led my life, and that's how I think everyone should. Again, that's my opinion. I'm certain that there'll be some blowback to that along the way, but whatever. Let's go on to the next story. I think this guy's gotten enough publicity.
Yeah, so from somber news, we go to a lighter news, and pretty interesting news at that. So you remember Chris Sims, one of former NFL quarterbacks, won a couple of Super Bowls, and now he's an analyst. So he did have his rankings for draft quarterback prospects for the 2021 NFL draft. And you wouldn't guess who the number 1 person in his board is. It's apparently Zach Wilson of BYU, who is at the top. Trevor Lawrence, number 2, and Mac Jones is number 3. So just going through the list, Kellen Mond of Texas A&M, number 4. Justin Fields goes at number 5, and Trey Lance, number 6. So what do you think about Chris Sims' projections for the draft?
Well, first of all, Chris Sims is one of my favorite analysts. He really is. Like, that guy talks in such a great common sense format and comes from some experience. He obviously comes from a deep football background. His father is Phil Sims, who is an NFL quarterback and obviously a 2-time Super Bowl winner with the New York Giants. Chris played at, I believe, University of Texas, got drafted by Tampa, played for John Gruden, got a lot of experience in the NFL. Tough guy. Actually got his career ended after he got hit in the spleen, and he actually went back out and played, almost died, and then he couldn't play anymore. But as far as an analyst goes, he's one of my favorites, and I've been looking forward to the fact that he's been talking about how he's going to deep dive into these quarterbacks. Talking about the kid from BYU being the number 1 guy, though, is quite shocking to me. I thought Trevor Lawrence was going to be the number 1 guy with a bullet. I didn't think there was any conversation there. But apparently there is some conversation, which is going to lead to a lot of really interesting things coming up here. If that becomes a consensus, where people honestly think that he is at least on par with Trevor, it's going to be very, very interesting. And the Jets are going to have an interesting decision at pick number 2, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later on, which will probably segue right into that. So it's really interesting that that's his list. What's most interesting to me is there's 2 things. I'll be really honest. that the number 3 overall pick or the number 3 overall ranked quarterback is going to be Mac Jones. And that's incredibly interesting to me because Mac Jones was a guy that nobody was giving any credit to at all. Like he was literally a guy where they're like, he's not even a first round talent. Now Sims is coming out and saying he's 3rd overall. I've heard a couple of people say, hey, he's a better prospect than Tua was supposed to be. That's a big thing if that actually becomes true, because it's going to throw that draft board upside down. And the last thing is Trey Lawrence. Trey was like a guy that everyone was saying could be like the second best guy, but wouldn't get that type of draft status because he only got to play one game last year. So he played one game, didn't play very well, didn't play particularly well in the one game he played, and now he's going to fall maybe out of the first round. So this is a guy that would have been a top 10 guy if he came out last year, or would have been a top 10 guy if he got to play all year this year, and is now probably going to fall to the first round and maybe give somebody a real steal of a quarterback. That's interesting.
Yeah. So reading through Chris Sims' analysis, though, so that's why the reason why he put Wilson at number 1 is that the only knock against Zach Wilson is his size. So he couldn't see any negative thing with his mechanics, with his footwork, with his the total scheme for being a quarterback, as compared to Trevor Lawrence, who he thinks has some work to do in terms of throwing the ball and overall mechanics. So that's how he ranked these quarterbacks. So just like you mentioned, he does know his
Wilson's size. What is Wilson's size?
Yeah, let me check that up for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know he was on the smaller size. That is really interesting. By the way, if you guys are watching the show right now, don't forget to like, subscribe, become part of the What's on Sports family by going over to whatsonsports.com and joining the $2 Sports Club. Right now, we're talking about Chris Sims' draft analysis of the best quarterbacks in the Ncaa, the guys that are coming out, and we're trying to find out what Zach, the kid from BYU's height is, which is a little
okay.
bit.
So apparently he's still 6'3", so he's tall for a quarterback. But apparently Trevor Lawrence is 6'6", so I guess that's where the comparison starts.
Well, look, as an athlete, seeing a 6'6" guy like Trevor Lawrence who can move like Trevor Lawrence, like that's what people want in a quarterback. You want a huge guy back there who can see over the offensive line. But let's be realistic about the fact that we've never seen a 6'6" quarterback really do well in the NFL. Everybody wants that big guy. Everybody wants that huge, tall guy who can see over everybody with the long length of the arm. Nothing's going to get batted down. But no, we've never seen a 6'6" guy do really well in the NFL. So it'll be interesting. Before we go over to our next topic, I want to take one of our questions from the audience real quick. And this one is, hey, guys, do you think Fitz might stay another to see what can happen, or will he retire, change teams? I believe they're talking about Fitz Magic, the quarterback who
Fitz Magic in the air.
Who was with the Miami Dolphins. I believe he's a free agent this year. Listen, I think there's a market for a guy like Fitz. I think somebody out there is going to say, we're going to be dedicated to bringing in a young signal caller. And as soon as they find out that they're going to do that, they're going to bring in a guy like Fitz. They're going to bring in a guy like Alex Smith once he becomes available from Washington. These are guys that can be great mentors that you can bring in that'll actually take your quarterback and bring them to the next level and really show them what it's like to be a pro. Now, the only downside of somebody like Fitz is that Fitz is a gunslinger. And if that mentality is learned by the quarterback that he's training, or the quarterback who's understudying him, it could turn out a bad way. Because Fitz, for all of his glories and all of his excitement, he does do some pretty dumb shit. So I would say that, I mean, let's be honest. So I would say, will he have a job next year? Yes. If he wants one, he'll have a job. Will he retire? Very possible. Will he go back to the Miami Dolphins? I don't think so. I think he's a guy right now who's proven to him that he could be like a bridge starter. You can put him in place and let your rookie quarterback sit, learn, especially if COVID, especially if COVID's an issue again this year, and we're dealing with teams that can't actually get on the field to practice and things like that. I think that could be somewhere where he could actually come into play and be someone who's kind of important. All right. So wait, we have another question coming in here. What happened here? Oh no, it's the same question. Sorry, I got it messed up. Let's jump on to our next topic. You have some great information. The question is, the Jets will answer phone calls for Sam Darnold offers. Is the topic. Apparently, this went from no, we're not interested in getting rid of Sam Darnold to now they're saying, hey, best offer. Well, what have you heard?
Okay, so apparently initially, so Sam Darnold was treated as an untouchable by the New York Jets. So come what may, be it the apocalypse or not, they are thinking that they will stick with Sam Darnold, even with the second overall draft pick. But
Mm.
apparently, there has been a change of heart in New York, and the general manager Joe Douglas is saying, and I quote, "I will answer the call if it's made." So he's referring to any call made by any team
Mm.
inquiring about Sam Darnold. So of course, it also anchors on what they do with the second overall selection, whichever outcome will come out of the Sam Darnold situation that they have. So if he trades him, more likely that they will get a quarterback. So if he stays, maybe they are in play for somebody else in the draft with the second overall selection, or possibly trade down. That's a possibility as well. So, how do you see this development unfolding, John? Or where do you think Sam Darnold will end up and where he will land?
Well, look, to me, I think a lot of what we're doing right now with the draft speculation is fun, but I don't think any of it means anything until the first wave of free agency happens and those little trades happen. So you look at somebody like the Jets. I think the Jets are saying, look, if we can get value for Sam Darnold and whatever they think that value is, whether it's a first round draft choice, a second and a future third, a third and a future second, something like that, the Jets are willing to listen, but they're only willing to listen as they do their scouting. And as they do their scouting, if they start to see a guy like Zach Wilson or the kid from Ohio State or even Mac Jones or someone like that, and they say, look, this is a guy who's as good or possibly better than Sam Darnold, and we're going to get him at a rookie price over the next 4 years as we rebuild this team. If that's something that they're looking at, if that's the direction that they want to go in, and a lot of it, again, doesn't just come down to what I just talked about before. Some of it just comes down to what is our plan as a franchise. Well, if our plan as a franchise is in 2021, we need to be competitive, you're keeping Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's got the experience. He needs some talent around him. That seems to be the consensus of what everybody thinks of Sam Darnold. If he had a better team, a better scheme, he'd be a better quarterback. But if you're on a 3-year plan, you hired a new coach and you're like, look, we have a 3-year plan. And our 3-year plan is that by 2021, we want to be a better team. 2022, we want to be competitive. And by 2023, we want to win our division. If that's the plan, then you're going to go rookie quarterback and you're going to get rid of Sam Darnold. And you've got a price in mind. And your price is going to be, like I said, whether it's a draft pick this year or a draft pick next year, maybe 2 draft picks, maybe 3 draft picks, maybe it's some type of deal where I get a player back. I don't even want a draft pick. I need a safety. I need a cornerback. I don't know what the trade's going to be, but I think they're willing to listen. And in my opinion, I think the Jets have had internal conversations saying, listen, we've tried over and over again. We're going to try this a completely different way. We've got draft picks. We've got draft capital. We've got a defensive-minded coach. We're in a position to take a really good quarterback who's going to be young. We're going to hire a better offensive coordinator, a better quarterback coach to bring this kid up, start all over again. We don't want Sam Darnold, who we consider to be damaged goods from what happened before, and we're going to start all over again. And that's what I kind of see happening with the New York Jets. And maybe the Jets are even in a position where they're saying, look, we're going to do that, and then we're going to hire Fitzmagic as our starting quarterback, or bring in an Alex Smith or someone like that, or I don't know who it would be. They're going to bring in somebody else who would be the starter, who this young kid can learn from, sit for a while, and do the Patrick Mahomes thing, where this guy gets to sit for 6, 8, 10 games, and then he gets to be released out into the public and can actually play. If I'm the Jets, that's my plan. Everything else they've tried has been a complete failure. At this point, it's time to reboot your thinking and start all over again. And how about you? You think the Jets are going to get rid of Darnold?
Yeah, I do agree with the fact that Sam Darnold was dealt a bad deck of cards when he started with the NFL. I mean, he was under Adam Gase initially. So from that fact alone, so he was not able to maximize his potential in the field. And Adam Gase was not able to maximize him as well. So I see this ploy by the New York Jets coming down to 2 things. Number one, setting the right price for Sam Darnold. They would like to listen to offers. They would like to listen how the other franchises value Sam Darnold as a quarterback and as an asset. Because as of now, he still has a price. But if they prolong this so-called answering of calls, his value might come down. So at the onset of free agency, it's nice to establish his value. Because once they establish his value, I guess the second thing that the Jets are trying to promote or like to say to the rest of the NFL is that we are indeed drafting a quarterback at number two,
Mm.
regardless of who it is.
Yeah.
So if you're a team that is in need of a quarterback and you are down the list in the first round, then you have the Jets as potential trade offer as
Yeah.
well. You can
Yeah.
put trade offer to them as well. So we would like to get your second round draft pick in exchange of this and this and this. So it's like
Mm.
hitting two birds with one stone. Yeah. So or hitting two situations with one news or with one development. You get a proper price for Darnold, and apparently, looking around the league, it's really tough to see where he fits because he would fit in a team wherein they have a questionable quarterback situation or a
Yep.
team that has an aging quarterback that is ready to go in like 1 or 2 seasons. That's the only situations I see for Sam Darnold thriving in the NFL.
Well, look, even that second situation, that's something that I've heard a lot of people in sports talking about. Oh, like Pittsburgh should sign him. He could sit for a year behind Ben, maybe 2 years. Well, Sam Darnold in his fourth year. His fifth-year option is worth $25 million. So if you want to pick up his fifth year, you can't pick it up as a backup quarterback. You've got to pick up his fifth-year option as a starter. And you can't take him and let him sit on the bench for a year and wonder if he's going to be a starter or not, because you've got to make the commitment as to whether or not you want to pick up his fifth-year option right now. So you're really it's a crunch time situation for somebody like Sam Darnold. Now, the only difference would be if you were able to take Sam Darnold, put together a trade, and at the same time work with his agent to put together some type of extension that excluded the fifth-year option and said, look, we're willing to put you on a 2 or 3 year deal at $12 million a year. And you could have the possibility of being the starter, some way that the team could get out some way. So I think there's a lot of intricacies inside that contract that we don't understand. But the one number that I know is true is that if they pick up that fifth-year option, it's $25 million. That's starter money. That's not a guy who's going to sit around behind somebody. So I think if you're going to trade an asset and that's what makes the Sam Darnold trade a little tricky. Whatever asset you're willing to trade for him comes along with the fact that you've got to believe that he could be your starter, because you're giving up an asset and you're going to have to renegotiate that contract right now. So there's no tomorrow on the contract. It's got to be done right now as soon as you make the trade. So I don't know that deal is going to happen for that reason. And if it happens, I think that's going to affect the compensation that the Jets will get back, because you're not trading a player who's got a 4-year contract. So I wouldn't give you a second-round draft choice. I might give you a third or a fourth. So this is going to come down to an Eagles situation where the Eagles had a value for Carson Wentz that they were not able to get. Mm-hmm. The Eagles were trying to get 2 first-round draft choices for a guy that couldn't even start last year. So the Jets might be in the same situation. And look, I feel bad for the Jets. The Jets fans, I've got a lot of Jets fans that are friends. The Jets have tried over and over again to put that team together, to assemble a team that isn't a complete nightmare, and they have failed again and again. And it also, as a segue into later on, we're going to talk about how that's happened, because the Jets are one of the biggest spenders in free agency, and it hasn't worked for them. So it's very interesting to me that this has worked out this way. But anyway, as far as the Sam Darnold goes, I think he's a good guy. I think he's a pretty good quarterback, actually. Hopefully he goes somewhere where they actually need a quarterback and can get to work. But let's talk about it really quick.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
Hang on, but before we move on to the next subject, where would he go? Who needs a quarterback right now that you think is willing to make a long-term commitment to a guy like Sam Darnold?
Well, he's still a viable option. So if Atlanta actually can make a deal with him, that's a possible destination. Matt Ryan is getting older, so he could be like the next person in. He could also be.
Hang on. So the problem in Atlanta is that Matt Ryan is a $40 million cap hit if they cut him this year.
Yeah.
So they're not going to cut him. So I think he's $40 million this year and $20 million next year if they cut him. So they're kind of married to to Matt Ryan over the next 2 years. So as much as Atlanta wants to move forward, they signed a bad contract they're stuck in. So who else actually needs a quarterback that isn't going to draft somebody in the top 10? The Patriots?
You can look at the Patriots also.
The Jets would never do a deal with the Patriots. So the Patriots are out. The last thing you want to do is trade Sam Darnold to the Patriots, have him become the next Tom Brady, and then you got to face him twice a year with your fan base trying to kill you. So you would never
that's the
do
worst
that.
case scenario. Yeah, I agree. But it does make sense.
Now, if Houston gets rid of Deshaun Watson, Houston might be in the ballpark or might be in the business of a quarterback. Chicago might be in the business of a quarterback. But there's not a lot of teams out there that are actually don't have an opportunity to pick in that top 10 area with all these good quarterbacks that really need a quarterback. Good teams don't need quarterbacks. The Saints could be a possibility. If the Saints aren't sold on Jameis Winston and instead want to go outside the system and try to get a Sam Darnold, the Saints could be a possibility for Sam Darnold.
Yeah, the problem with the Saints, though, the salary cap is just egregious.
Yeah.
They're still $70 million over the cap. So even though they get Sam Darnold, they would have to cut a lot of those talented players. So it's like the Jet situation all over again. It doesn't have much to work with the Saints.
Yeah, so it's a tough situation if you have Sam Darnold and you want to get rid of Sam Darnold, you have to find a taker. You have to find a market, and the market closed up a little bit this year. So, obviously Detroit was looking for a different quarterback. Well, they made their move. The Rams wanted to switch up. Well, they made their move. Indianapolis needed a quarterback. Well, they made their move. A lot of these guys have already made their move. So, and I'm going to take a wild guess that Indianapolis probably kicked the tires on the Sam Darnold deal and probably found that they wanted at least a comparable trade for what they got for Wentz or maybe more. So, I don't know. It's going to be tough for the Jets to find a taker. And then if you're the Jets, think about this. If you're the Jets and you're put in that position and you're like, okay, we've got the second overall pick, we can get a quarterback, but we have Sam Darnold. And if we don't do something with Sam Darnold, he's going to be basically our lame duck quarterback. He's going to play this year, and he's going to know he's not playing here next year. So we've created almost an uncomfortable locker room atmosphere where the team doesn't want to follow the guy who they know is not going to be here next year. And I don't know. I just think that whole thing's a clusterfuck, in my opinion. So, listen.
I agree. So
Go ahead. You got something?
Yeah, I would just like to add one interesting destination for Sam Darnold. I'm not sure whether you agree with this or not. What about the Giants, though? So he's now in New York. So he just crosses to the other team. I'm not sure if the Giants are really sold on Daniel Jones being their potential quarterback for the future. So if he has Sam Darnold there, though, they can create a quarterback competition in the Big Blue.
Well, it would be interesting. The Giants have not had good quarterback play the last few years. Now, a lot of that is a Jets type situation. I think you and I have had this conversation before in private. You think about the biggest market for sports, maybe in the world, is New York, at least among the top markets in the world. And so you look at New York. New York City has two teams that they have. One is an AFC team, one is an NFC team, and both are absolutely horrendous. Both have no offensive weapons or almost no offensive weapons. I mean, you could argue for the Giants having Saquon Barkley, but Barkley was hurt last year and wasn't very good. And they've both got young quarterbacks who've had really no support around them. So I don't know that if you're sending Sam Darnold to the Jets, if you're giving him a better opportunity than he had when he was. I'm sorry, if you're saying the Giants, if he has a better opportunity than what he's had with the Giants, the Jets. I think it's kind of like apples to apples. I think you're giving Sam Darnold no opportunity there. And again, are you willing to trade for him and make a long-term deal? If not, what is the value of a 1-year rental for a quarterback for a team that's probably not going to be in contention? I tell you what, though, here's an idea. But before we go to the next segment, here's an idea. Sam Darnold to the Washington Redskins. You move him over to the Redskins. The Redskins need a long-term solution. The Redskins bring him in, sign him to a 3-year deal, give up a third-round draft choice. And now they've got Sam Darnold in the fold. They've got the kid they signed for $4 million for no reason in the fold. They cut Alex Smith. That gives them the cap room that they need in order to make the move to sign Sam Darnold. I mean, that's probably the best fit right now, just off the top of my head. I'd have to go through all the teams and really look at it, but to me, that might be one of the best fits. So let's move on to the next subject, and this is kind of all tied together today. We talked earlier about how it's hard to predict what the Jets or a team like that are going to do if you don't know what their salary cap ramifications are going to be, and if you don't know what their roster is going to look like. So some of these mock drafts just kind of become a joke. Well, now we're going to talk about some of the latest salary cap cuts, and Lance has had his ear to the grindstone, finding out who's being cut, why they're being cut, how much money is being saved. We've been tracking all of this in some of the articles he's written over at What's on Sports, and we've covered it in detail on this podcast. So if you're listening right now, don't forget to like, subscribe, use the love thing, whatever you guys are doing. Your approval to us is all we seek. We just want you to like us. That's it. Okay. Anyway, let's talk about the latest salary cap cuts.
Okay, so fire away. So we have just spoken about the New York Giants. So apparently they have just released 2 players from the roster. One of them is a wide receiver Golden Tate and linebacker David Mayo. So both of them combined for 8.4 million in cap space for 2021. So the Giants will be saving much money cutting these 2 people. So of course, Golden Tate signed a 4-year deal, but never really lived up to that deal. He was suspended for substance policy, and he was really not the same player when he was on the field.
Yeah.
And for David Mayo, he got injured, was put on injured reserve early in the season because of a torn meniscus, and he was just not the same as well. So Giants saving money by cutting these 2 players.
Yeah, I was always a fan of both of these guys. It's really a shame that that neither one did much for the Giants. And I understand the Giants are in a position right now where they've got to just release people and clear up some cap space. And unfortunately, when you see a guy like these guys, they're probably on what should be on their 3rd contracts. It's hard to see either one of these guys actually finding a job, especially this year with limited budgets out there. So this doesn't shock me at all. Doesn't shock me in the least.
Yeah, I do agree. As always in the NFL, and just like in any a sporting league there is, you are always judged by your last performance. So even though you did well in the middle of your career, but towards your 3rd contract, you essentially did nothing, then that could spell doom for your legacy in the NFL. So apparently this is what happened to both of them. I mean, Golden Tate was one of the more viable receivers early on in his career. Just so happened that Father Time has finally caught up to him, and he has done some not admirable things outside the field. So that's why he was suspended for violation substance policy.
Yeah.
So it would be tough for him to get into an NFL roster again, and even for David Mayo. So I do hope that they have their savings intact, because it would take a while for them to return, if they return at all in the NFL.
Yep. This is going to be a tough year. You're going to see a lot of guys like this that probably in years past would have picked up another contract, would have ended up somewhere with another uniform on, not get that chance. And it's not because they don't have talent. It's not because somebody doesn't believe in them. It's going to be simply because these guys are going to want X amount of dollars, and no one's going to have that money available. This cap, I'm so looking forward to seeing what the ramifications of these cap issues are, because you still have people like quarterbacks demanding to make $40 million a year, $38 million a year. Dak Prescott saying he wants Patrick Mahomes money. You cannot possibly think that you could ask for that kind of money in years like this year and what will probably be next year, at least until they sign that new television contract, given the current situation. And it's not that I'm saying the owners are crying poor. It's that I'm saying that these guys are not making the money that they were making. So the cap is coming down. So it's a hard cap. You know the number. Well, we don't know the number yet, but they will know the number, and they can't go over it. So teams are not very likely to commit $7, $8, $10 million to vested veterans just to have them on the roster. They need the cap space. So I think both these guys very well could be done.
Yeah. And also banking on your statement, I see a lot of 1-year contracts happening this offseason, because you don't know how much the salary cap will jump in 2022.
Yeah.
Will it jump extensively, or will it be like the same 10% or 5% increase as with the past seasons? So going into
Well, no, I was going to say, I think if you're a veteran player, that's probably your strategy. Your strategy is, look, just sign me for a year. Give me a 1-year deal anywhere. I know I made $8 million last year. I'll play for 3 this year. I'll play for 2. It's still a boatload of money. It's still way more money than I would get in a real job. Let me get one last bite of the apple. And you know what? If I have a great year this year, I've opened myself up to next year signing another 1 year, another 2 year. Granted, I don't have long-term flexibility in what I'm doing, but I'm still making a ton of money, and I'm setting myself up for the future. So some of these guys, they're going to have these hard numbers and say, look, I want 7 or 8 million. I think you're going to be out without a job. I think guys that are smart that say, look, I'll play for 2 or 3 million, and I'll be that locker room presence that comes in and teaches your young wide receivers how to play. Or I'll be the guy. And unfortunately, one of the guys you just talked about was just suspended for PEs, so he's probably not the best example. But I'm just saying that there are guys like that could open the door for themselves to continue to play in this league if they're willing to take a pay cut and not say, well, I'm not going to do this for less than $6 million. Because to me, that's losing sight of what reality is. Oh, so you're not willing to do the job for $1 million? Because there's no job in the world I wouldn't do for $1 million. So but of course, no one's ever paid me $7 million to do a job. So I guess I'm speaking from a different perspective. But go ahead, continue.
Okay, so speaking of one bite, Kyle Van Noy is apparently done with the Miami Dolphins after one season. So he just signed a 4-year deal with the Dolphins, and it came out of left field that he is apparently being cut by the Dolphins after just one season. So he had a stable year in 2020, regarded as one of the veteran presence in the Dolphins defense, if not the emotional leader of that unit. And apparently the Dolphins have seen enough to cut him. And by doing so, they will be saving $9.7 million in cap space. So what do you think about this move, John? Is it the right move for the Dolphins?
Well, I think there's a couple things that need to be said about this. First of all, whoever did this contract, they put together his contract, and his contract was very simple. His contract was 1 year. It was a 5-year deal, or it was a 4-year deal for $50 million. I think it was 4 years, $50 million, which was a really high contract. And it had only 1 year of guaranteed money. So what that means is that only if the Dolphins are in absolutely terrible position and Van Noy has an all-pro year are they going to go into year 2. Now you also look at the roster, and they got a guy named Andrew Van Ginkel, or Andrew Van Winkle. I think his name is Ginkel, but I always call him Andrew Van Winkle. And Van Ginkel played really, really well. So you're looking at what would have been Van Noy's price tag, which I think was $10 million, $12 million, or you got Van Ginkel, who's playing on a rookie contract. Look, I think teams are making those decisions based off of that. And again, this is another one of those situations where you look at the Dolphins. The Dolphins are saying, listen, we can keep Van Noy for another year. He's a good player. He's a great locker room leader. But if we clear some space, we might have an opportunity at Deshaun Watson. If we can clear some space, we can get into the Russell Wilson conversation. And if we can clear some space and something happens with Dak Prescott, we can be in that conversation as well. But if we don't clear space, we can never be in any of these conversations. So if I've got a guy who plays just as good as the other guy, I'm going to let the $10 million guy go. I'm going to clear space, and just so I can be part of the conversation. This is very similar to going shopping with no money in your pocket. So if you got $5 in your pocket and that's all you've got, and you're going out and looking for brand new Nikes tennis shoes that are $100 or more, you're just teasing yourself. Why are you even going? Why are you entering the conversation? You can't afford the shoes. You got $5. So this is the same thing that I think the Dolphins are doing. And I think you're seeing a couple teams do it that are making some small cuts that you're talking about, where you're saying, hey, they have a lot of cap space. Why are they cutting guys? They could actually afford to keep a guy or two. So these guys are either looking at Deshaun Watson or the quarterback situation, or they see other assets that they may be able to get. And they understand the market value of some of these players is going to go down significantly. So a guy like Van Noy, who was signing a $15 million deal before, is going to go out in the market now and find out that there are no $15 deals for Kyle Van Noy. There might be $60 million deals and $7 million deals. So the Dolphins might be saying to themselves, listen, we can make a lateral movement if we want to hire somebody. If we want to bring in another guy, we could probably get the same kind of talent for $5 million and continue to build our roster. So I think it's a smart move by the Dolphins, in my opinion. It's a sucky move because a lot of people are upset because people really like Kyle Van Noy, including a lot of the players and coaches. So people are upset that it's happened, but you have to understand it from a business standpoint. This is the business side of football.
Yeah, that's the sad part of it. You are always judged by your results on the field, your wins, your championships, and whatnot. And apparently, Kyle Van Noy is just collateral damage. I mean, that deal is really enormous by his standards, coming from like a 15 million deal to a 50, and guaranteed money of 30 million. So that's an enormous deal for a linebacker. So here's what I see the Dolphins are doing. So they release him. And just like what the Broncos are doing by releasing all sorts of players, they are keeping themselves in the conversation, in the play for Deshaun Watson because they have been floated as one of the potential trade partners of the Texans once the negotiations for Deshaun Watson eventually open. So it's the Jets and the Dolphins. So they are eventually clearing cap space so that they can compensate for the salary that Deshaun Watson has. And another thing that I'm looking at it is that they also have the number 18 draft choice in the 2021 draft. So is it possible that they might go linebacker in that pick or a defensive lineman or whatsoever? So it just open ups or like um, puts more direction into their draft strategy coming into the first round.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. This is all about like in business, you need to be pliable, you need to be flexible, you need to set yourself up in a position where you're able to make moves. And I think the Dolphins are finally running their organization like a football, like an actual business. They're running their football team like a business, and a business needs to have financial flexibility. I don't think it's a terrible move. I think it's emotionally it's a bad move because, like I said, a lot of fans liked him. You got to love the way Van Noy plays. He's a high motor guy. I think he was top 10 in pressures this year. He was top 10 in win rate this year. So I think he's a good player. I just think they decided we have a player on our roster that is of equal value as far as production wise. We think we can get equal production out of this kid who is playing for a tenth of what you're playing for. We'll stay with the kid, let him develop, and we're going to have to say goodbye to you. Thanks for playing with us. So what else you got today?
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of saying goodbye, and this is a tough goodbye for the Minnesota Vikings. So they are letting go of 10-year veteran. Yeah, they are letting go of 10-year veteran Kyle Rudolph, the tight end. So after 10 seasons, Kyle Rudolph will finally be a free agent for the first time in his NFL career. So the release or the cap cut will save the Vikings $5.1 million in cap space. So former second-round draft pick of the Vikings in 2011, he has played his entire career with the Vikings. And how do you see his NFL career going, John?
They've been talking about cutting Kyle Rudolph for a while now. Like it's really strange that he's actually been able to hold on there. So a couple of years ago, I want to say it was like 2016, he had like 80 or 90 catches. Really good year for Rudolph. He's never really been able to match that. He's really like a 30, 40, 50 catch kind of guy. Last year, played 12 games, 28 receptions. Wasn't even the number one tight end that they targeted. They drafted a tight end last year. I think it was a good move by Minnesota to move on from him, especially at that price. But a guy like Rudolph, if he can stay healthy, is a really, really valuable person in the world of the NFL today. You're going to see a team like the Steelers or maybe even the Patriots or somebody like that find value in him and go ahead and actually make a move to sign Kyle Rudolph. Now, it's not going to be for the amount of money that he played for in Minnesota. But again, I think he's a 1 year kind of guy. We'll give you a 1 year deal with a 1 year option. We'll sign you for $4 or $5 million. You can come in. You can be our starting tight end. You could be our extra special second tight end that we bring out every once in a while. He's not an elite athlete. He's not one of those guys, but he's a really good inline blocker. And he's got decent hands. And by all accounts, everything I've ever read about Kyle Rudolph, people actually like him as a locker room player. So it'd be interesting to bring him in somewhere again, going into what today's salary cap is. It'd be very interesting to see where he ends up and what his value is. Do you know what his number was when he got cut? Like how much was his value? Was he like $8 million or something like that?
Yeah, let me check that up. Yeah.
I'll check it up. You can respond real quick.
Well, you wouldn't last 10 years in one franchise if you're not like like a father figure to the younger players or someone that the community admires. So that's what's going on for Kyle Rudolph. So he has been a warrior for the Vikings for at least a decade, and it's just sad for Minnesota to see somebody like him go. And just like what you mentioned, he's not an elite tight end as right now in this stage of his career, but he would be effective with teams that love their dual tight end sets. So funny you mentioned the New England Patriots. That's because that's one of the destinations that I was thinking, because Bill Belichick loves dual tight end sets. So he could come in there and he could catch a few balls for a few yards just to move the ball downfield. And of course, offer an extra body in blocking, whoever their quarterback might be. So that would be an interesting situation also for Kyle Rudolph. Another team that I think he would be of great service, Cincinnati, because one of the problems of Cincinnati last season is, of course, the offensive line blocking for Joe Burrow, and that's how he got this injury. So he could be an extra blocker, and more importantly, he could be like a teacher to these young players in the fold for the Bengals.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. By the way, I just looked it up. Kyle Rudolph was $7.3 million last year, and there's excuse me, a very good chance he retires because his career earnings are $50 million.
Oh, that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, you figure taxes, he probably lost 15 in taxes. Maybe he spent 5 in the last few years. Say he's got 30 million. Let's just say he spent 10 because he's crazy. Let's say he's got 25. The guy's got $25 million in the bank probably right now, somewhere in that neighborhood. And unless his investments are making money, which is very possible, he's got 25 million or more. Does he really want to play football anymore? We'll see. You know, sometimes you get guys like this. The guy's played 10 years in Minnesota. He's got a home in Minnesota. He's part of the community in Minnesota. Maybe he's got a wife and kids. He doesn't want to move the kids. Does he need to play football anymore? Look, at 30-something years old, put $25 million in my bank, and I think, I'm going to probably just stay there and hang out. And, if I want to still be a part of football, I can get a job in the front office or maybe become a coach or something. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, though.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what's the next stage of his career, though. So speaking of more cuts, so more tight ends being released from the NFL, from their teams rather. So New Orleans Saints are releasing a pair of tight ends apparently. So Jared Cook and Josh Hill are not with the New Orleans Saints anymore. And just like what we mentioned time and time again, the Saints have a lot of cuts to do to just go under the cap.
Yeah, I'm surprised by the Jared Cook thing. I know his contract was a lot, but I thought Jared Cook was an integral part of that offense. He's a really good player. So I'm a little shocked by that, to be quite honest with you. But he's a guy that'll find a team. Jared Cook's the kind of player that'll actually find a team. 40 catches, 500 yards, 13.5 yards of reception last year. The year before, 16 yards of reception, 9 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns. The guy's an actual integral piece of an offense that can actually really play. And he's one of those tight ends you can split out wide, which is really the whole new thing in the NFL today. He's just a matchup nightmare when you split him out wide or put him in the slot. So interesting that they're letting him go. I wonder where he ends up. I think that's I think that's a more interesting conversation than the Kyle Rudolph one. Kyle Rudolph's play had been slipping slowly but surely. But when you look at somebody like Jared Cook I think can still play.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And Jared Cook can still play at a high level, unlike Kyle Rudolph. Even if you have a single tight end set, he could be that single tight end for you. So it would be interesting where he would land. But could this be a play wherein they cut Cook and also Josh Hill, so that's 2 tight ends? So are the Saints saying that Taysom Hill will be their tight end moving forward? And whoever the quarterback may be, will it be Jameis Winston or maybe Sam Darnold or whatsoever? So could that be the route they are going to by cutting these 2 tight ends?
Well, look, I think a lot of this is, when you talk about the Saints really quick, a lot of this is like the domino effect. So what is Drew Brees going to do? As soon as you find out what Drew Brees is going to do, then you move forward. Then you find out who your quarterback's going to be. And free agency starts in, I think, 10 days or 12 days. So they've got to make a choice like pretty darn quick here. Like this has to happen really fast. If they don't make this choice really quick, they're going to be in a bad situation. So they've got to decide who their quarterback's going to be. So I don't think Taysom Hill becomes the tight end, though. I think that's where I was going. I think Taysom Hill, look, for me, Taysom Hill has a value as what he is. When you make Taysom Hill your quarterback, you lose that value of what the guy is. And right now he is a slash. He's a quarterback / running back / wide receiver / tight end / fullback. Weapon. He's just a weapon. He's a weapon unlike any other team in the NFL really has right now. So I think he remains that value. I think they try to get him a little more into the offense a little bit. And I think that in doing so, he gives you this option of like, look, he's not only our backup quarterback, which we don't have to keep a roster spot for a backup quarterback, but that backup quarterback also plays all these other positions. And then you sign a Winston, you trade for a Darnold, then you make that move and you figure it out. That's my opinion. But if you listen to Sean Payton last year, he said he was the next Steve Young. So, I mean, that's possible. Sean Payton knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, that's possible. And I still believe that Sean Payton will be the best coach to bring out the best in Taysom Hill. He's that kind of coach, and he has proven that regardless of who the quarterback is, he has proven that he can win in the NFL.
Agree. And any more salary cap cuts?
Okay, so final salary cap cut for today. So New York Jets. So New York Jets, despite having a massive salary cap space, so they're still cutting players, and they have just released the defensive lineman Henry Anderson. So he was due $8.2 million this season, and with no guaranteed money. So they saved that entire $8.2 million. So despite the big cap space, the Jets are still shedding money out of their payroll.
That's also interesting. Again, when you see teams with cap space in the positions that they're in, and they're clearing out space, it's because they're trying to buy something. If you're selling all your stuff, it's because you're trying to use the money to buy something, or you got a bill coming due, and that bill coming due very well could be in the form of a big quarterback for a team like the Jets. That would be very, very interesting. I still can't believe that they're on the watch list for Deshaun Watson, that he actually listed the Jets as one of the teams he wants to go to. Like as if he's completely unaware of what he's talking about. It's one of the worst franchises in all of sports. And you're going, yeah, I'd like to go there. That'd be interesting. In a market that's absolutely devastating to people. But whatever. Hey, you know what? Well, let's move on to our next topic. Before we do, I'll remind everybody, whatsonsports.com is the website. You can go over there today and you can check out our $2 Sports Club. We're going to go on to our final topic of the day. It's the free agency. And Lance has been doing a great little thing over there on the website on whatsonsports.com. He's been writing about the top free agents for every position around the NFL. And today, Lance is going to be talking about the top 5 free agent safeties, and I'm excited to hear your take on this one.
Okay, so let's get a ball rolling. So for me, the top free agent safety coming into the 2021 season has to be Justin Simmons. So formerly of the Denver Broncos, so he hasn't been signed yet by any team. So despite being relatively obscure for most NFL fans, he became one of the best safeties in the league. So he had a great 2020 season. He had 5 interceptions to go with 77 solo tackles. And more likely, teams will compete for his services. However, the concern is he commands a high price tag because he earned $11.4 million last season. And there's no indication of him taking less than that money. So all indications are still leading for the Broncos re-signing him. But the question is for how long? But until that happens, any team can swoop up Justin Simmons.
Safety is one of the most important positions in football right now.
Yep.
It's not talked about enough because so many people are in 3 safety looks. You need to have a deep position of safety. You need to have a couple guys that can play center field. You need to have a couple guys that can drop into the box and have that linebacker mentality while still having that safety ability. A guy like Justin Simmons is going to command a lot of money on the open market. When you look at the way they play defense in today's NFL, a guy like Justin Simmons has got a tremendous amount of value. I just don't see him being the guy who's going to get $11 million in this economy. Could be wrong. J.J. Watt just got 13 or 14, $15 million.
Yeah.
So apparently some teams are not afraid to spend over the next couple of years. Let's see what happens with Simmons. Who else you got on the list?
Yeah. Okay, so second on the list, so another safety with a high price tag is Anthony Harris, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings. So he had a pretty good season, not the best of seasons, but he was still okay when it comes to man and zone coverages in 2020 for the Vikings. And even though he is already 30 years old, he hasn't shown any signs that he's slowing down soon. So he still has that burst. He still has that quickness that made him an interesting prospect when he was still a rookie or a draftee. But again, just like Justin Simmons, he earned $11 million last season. So that will be a hefty price to pay for any team, including the Vikings, to get his services for 2021.
You think about how much money these guys make. I mean, guys making like $700,000 a game. I mean, every game every game that they play, they're making $700,000. If he misses a game, he's still making $700,000 or $800,000. It's absolutely ridiculous. You look at some of these really high price guys, and you have to wonder, when does the bubble break? When does the bubble really snap? You know, I spent a lot of time on a website called Over the Cap. It's overthecap.com. You can go there and you can look at everybody's salary cap situation. You can look at who the highest paid players are. And if you look at it, it's very much a weird culture where like the top guys make a lot of money and the other guys just kind of like they do okay. But there's so much money in the top. The top 6 or 7 guys make all the money on the team, and then you go down. So I think you have to look at a guy, when you look at some of these decisions, and you have to say to yourself, is this guy one of my 7 best players? Because I'm going to give him $10 million next year or $11 million. Is he one of the 7 best players? And if he's not, if he's honestly not one of your 7 best players or one of your 6 best players, you just cannot pay him that kind of money. So I don't know. That's a lot of money for a safety, brother. That's a lot of money. Who else you got on the list? Are they all paid like this?
No, apparently not. So we have finished the 2 safeties with the highest price tag. So we come now to the safeties, free agent safeties at that with more budget-friendly price tags, that is. So number 3 on the list, Marcus Williams, formerly of the New Orleans Saints. So Pro Football Focus has him as the highest-ranked safety last season in terms of run defense and tackling. So he's just 25 years old. And his style of play is that he's a reckless abandon to speak of. So he's not afraid to throw his body just to get a tackle or to just disrupt plays. So he has that unafraid mentality to be on the field. But the problem with that is because he's not afraid to take gambles, that he gets burned at times with big gains. So that's the biggest concern of his game, that he tends to be burned with long passes because he was not properly placed, especially in play action or all sorts of coverages. So Williams just earned like a 1.6 million last season. 1.56 to be exact for the Saints. And again, repeating the Saints salary cap situation. So any team can just easily come in and get his services, especially for those teams with enormous salary caps.
You look at a guy like this, though, and this is what I was talking about before, about how I think safeties now are being split into 2 separate categories. And one category is the guy who can play the deep middle, who can cover the slot. These are cover safeties. These are cover safeties. And then there's another new generation of safeties that's coming out that's almost like a safety linebacker hybrid. And obviously you need the skill set for that, but you need exactly what you're talking about, which is the mentality. Most safeties don't mind tackling. They don't want to tackle. And there's a big difference. I don't mind green beans. I don't mind spinach. I don't want it. I don't sit around and crave it. I'd rather eat a hamburger or a plate of pasta or some ice cream, but I don't mind doing it. When you find somebody that truly enjoys doing something, they're better at it. So the people who are the guys who aren't afraid to get down into the box and really want contact, really want to go into that hole, really want to fit the hole and really fit that run gap and really take on a guy like a Travis Henry, head on. Those are the guys that are going to play those box safeties, and there is value for them in the right system. The problem is when you try to rotate them out of that box safety position and move them into the backfield and tell them, listen, you're going to cover this half of the field or this third of the field or even deep center. Those guys just don't play very well. So somebody will sign this guy. He just came off a rookie contract. I think his expectations will be a little more centered. And I would bet that he's probably one of the first safeties to be signed.
Yeah, I agree with that. Marcus Williams showed versatility on the field in 2020. More importantly, he is a physical force to reckon with on defense. And who I cannot think of any team that wouldn't like that. So any team that has the money to spare should be calling the GM of New Orleans and at least inquire for his services if he's available.
100%. Who else you got? You got 2 more.
Okay. Okay, two more. So you have spoken about box safety. So we have another box safety who I think is one of the top five free agent safeties, and that is John Johnson, of formerly of the Los Angeles Rams. So
Hmm.
he was one of the more effective box safeties, in my opinion, in the NFL last season, and he has proven that by leading the Rams in tackles with 105 just in 2020.
Yeah.
So he is versatile enough to cover tight ends and even running backs in those slot or like intermediate routes when especially when they are flexed out. So Johnson is also adept in playing the single high safety role, but there's a room for improvement of him in terms of awareness or better awareness when the Rams or his next team is playing man coverage. So that's his weak point. So he's not that good when it comes to man coverages, especially in reading the rest of the field. But John Johnson just earned like 814,000 last season.
Hmm.
So and with the way he played last season in 2020, he is in for breaking the bank in 2021. So any team would like to pay for his services that do not like to pay the likes of the Simmons and the Harris can inquire about John Johnson.
Yeah, Johnson's a really flexible guy. Funny aside story, really quick. My father's best friend growing up was named John Johnson, which I always thought was when I was a kid was a really cool name because his name was John Johnson. But anyway, Johnson's actually a really interesting guy because of the fact that he does have position flexibility. He's not a big safety. He's only 205 pounds, so he's not a big safety. So the Rams did employ him a lot. And the Rams play a lot of cover too, so he did have half the field some of the time, and actually played pretty well for them. But I think he's most at home up close to the line. That seems to be where he seems to really like thrive, up close to the line where he can actually hit people. So again, if you're looking for that box safety, this is a guy that you might be able to sign. I don't know the value of anybody anymore because of this new COVID age with what's going on with people's finances. So I don't know where a guy like this fits in. Is he a $5 million guy? Is he a $7 million guy? Is he a $3 million guy? I'm so anxious to see how free agency opens up and see how people are going to spend. The worst teams are going to spend the most because the worst teams tend to have the most cap space as well because the worst teams usually can't manage their own cap situation. So they end up with like a lot of space. I'd rather have more space than less. And, I'm diverging into a different topic. But anyway, let me hear your last guy.
Okay, so last guy. So this guy benefited from one of his better teammates being traded to another team. So I'm referring to Marcus May, so formerly of the New York Jets. So he just burst into the scene once Jamal Adams went to the Seattle Seahawks. So just his 2020 numbers are astonishing. So he had 88 tackles, 4 of which are tackles for loss, and 11 passes defended. So he was just all over the field, Marcus May. And he also added that up with 2 interceptions and 2 forced fumbles, not to mention 2 quarterback hits as well. So he really emerged as one of the top players in that secondary for the Jets. And he earned just $1.6 million in 2020. And all indications are leading to him signing a long-term contract with the Jets, especially John. His agent criticized the Jets for not prioritizing him as a signee this free agency. So his agent tweeted that his client is not taken care of by the organization.
Yeah.
So that could force the organization to either franchise tag him or put him in a long-term contract.
Well, I think if you're looking at the Jets get rid of Adams, knowing that they've got this kid who can step in and take his place. Good move by the Jets. The Jets get rid of a guy that doesn't want to be there. They get a first-round draft choice in return. I think they got 2 actually, if memory serves me right. But now they got to sign this guy. You have cap space. This is a homegrown product. You've got to keep Marcus May in the building. I don't think Marcus May leaves, but I did read something where his shots were fired. His agent had said something like pretty demeaning about the organization, which is very weird for an agent to come out and take that type of approach in public like that. But I'm not sure that's going to do him any favors with the organization. But I think the Jets have to keep this guy. Now, franchise him. What's the franchise tag for a safety? $12 million, $14, $15 million? I don't think that's the play. I think the play is you have to step up to the plate and say, look, you made almost $2 million last year. We're willing to pay you $8 We'll do a 3-year deal, $24 million. This will get us out of this COVID situation. You'll make $24 million over the next 3 years, and you'll still be young enough to sign another contract either with us or with somebody else. I think that's the play that I come back to his agent with. And if he won't take that, you got to make sure you're not held hostage by your own free agents. I think that's an important aspect of re-signing your own players.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And given the Jets' enormous cap space, it's more likely that they'll sign this guy if they are really intent in rebuilding the team. I mean, they have like Quinn Williams, who is also an interesting piece in their defense. So at least they have that linebacker in tow, and they have one good secondary player in Marcus May. So that could be a good foundation for where they would like to be 3 or 4 seasons from now. So it all boils down to having Marcus May as a last line of defense in New York, because all of the other teams will just try to continually get them burned. And it's nice to have someone like a Marcus May in that last part of the defense
I
for the
agree.
Jets.
I couldn't agree anymore. Listen, we have a website. It's called whatsonsports.com. If you guys want to go over there, you can always leave us questions, and we're more than happy to answer them for you. Also, if you're listening to the show out there today, leave a like, leave a comment. You can subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. We love to have your feedback, and we love to have your questions throughout the show. Now, we have answered some of your questions today, but now we're going to dive into the mailbag, and we're going to answer even more questions from the people who go to our website. We'll start with question number 1. By the way, I've not read these questions. We just put them up, and I kind of answer them off the top of my head. So let's see what I know and what I don't know.
Okay, so first question comes from Guido of San Diego, California.
Guido!
So what's your take, John, on delaying head coaching hires until after the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I don't know if that's something that people want to do, because look, it's going to be just like free agency. A lot of these guys that know they're going to be free agents have already made deals with teams, and people can say that they haven't, because that would be considered colluding. But people are already making these decisions, and in order to say you're not going to hire a coach until after the Super Bowl means that those teams that are firing their coaches are going to be put in a bad situation. That means that I have to wait until the end of the year, until after the Super Bowl, in order to start interviewing and then hire my coaches. Well, in the meantime, who's scouting for the NFL Combine? Who's scouting for the draft? Who's doing all the analytics and everything we need to put together for free agency? So when I hire a coach, that coach will be behind the 8 ball, not only trying to put together his team. It's already hard enough. You're trying to put together your team. You're trying to put together, like, when I say team, I mean your assistant coaches, the people that are going to be helping you, your support staff. You're trying to put all that together, and you're trying to put together a scouting information coming up for the upcoming draft. You're trying to get all these things put together. You need as much time as possible. Now, I understand that now there's like this new thing of outrage, so we've got to make a really strong decision. And people are upset because some of the coaches, at least the assistant coaches that coached in the Super Bowl, were black, and they didn't get an opportunity to interview because they were busy. Well, that's just the way it goes. Next year, all the assistant coaches might be white. They might be Spanish. They might be something else. I don't know. We shouldn't change the rules because of an anomaly that happened this year. We should embrace it and say, hey, look how great this was. There were 5 assistant head coaches in the Super Bowl that were of some type of minority descent. That is an incredible step forward for the NFL. And it's a shame that those guys didn't get an opportunity to get a job. But there's always next year for those guys. If those guys are good coaches, they'll be good coaches next year, and they'll get another opportunity. I don't think changing the rules and putting a team in a position where they're going to be behind the 8 ball is going to fix anything. Because all it's going to do is make people say, I don't know if I want to fire somebody. I'm not going to fire this guy because I won't be able to get ready. I'll be behind the 8 ball trying to get ready for the draft, for free agency. It doesn't make sense from an organizational standpoint. People will hold their jobs much longer because of that little caveat.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I find this proposal insensitive because in the NFL, not all teams operate on the same timeline. So you have your contenders who can afford delays because they have everything they need. They have the players, they have the coaches, they have the training staff. But what about those teams that are just struggling or at the cellar, that are in dire need of a new breath of air or a new gush of wind in their city and in their organization? So they need all the jumpstart they need or they can get before the new season. So if you're telling me that you can only hire a head coach after the Super Bowl, first question is, when do you start talking to coaches?
Yeah.
So if you start late, then it just delays the entire timeline. So by the time you go to the combine, you might not have a head coach still.
Mm.
So how do you assess that, and
Yeah.
how do you get players that would uh, would thrive under that new head coach or under that new system? So that's a recipe for disaster already.
Yeah, when you look at a team that actually fires somebody in the middle of the season, somebody fires somebody in the middle of the season. Now what, they have to wait 10, 12 weeks before they can even interview their next head coach. They're going to be completely and totally stuck. So I don't think this fixes anything. I think this is one of those like snap judgment things of like, oh, well, let's just do this. Let's just push it off to the side, instead of actually really going through and saying, listen, if you want to have the Rooney Rule, if this is because of the Rooney Rule, if you think that that's what this is because, then you need to find better enforcement for the Rooney Rule. That's what it just needs to come down to. You have rules in place to prevent certain things from happening. If they're still happening, it means that you're not enforcing your own rules. It means that you don't have governors in place to actually keep your rules in place. You made the rule, figure out a way to make the rule work. Don't make a new rule because your first rule, you couldn't figure out a way to manage your first rule. So you're just punishing people for absolutely no reason. That's my opinion. I'm glad you agree. Let's go on to our next question.
Okay, second question comes from Bradley of Boca Raton, Florida. So did the Dolphins make the right move in releasing Kyle Van Noy?
So we talked about this earlier in the show a little bit. I'll just touch on it really quick because I don't want to beat a dead Van Noy horse. But I think it's a good move. I think it's a strong move by the Dolphins, and I think it's the right move. Kyle Van Noy was there for a reason. I think the Dolphins made that contract for a reason. He was a building piece, and if they couldn't find somebody who could play behind him, then they would keep him. But they have a young kid named Van Ginkel, who's actually a very good player, who they think is at least comparable to Van Noy with maybe more upside, who's going to play for about a fifth or a sixth of the price tag. So to me, I think it's a great move by the Dolphins. It's unfortunate for Van Noy because by all accounts, he's not only a good player, but he's actually a really good dude. So you hate to see a guy lose his job. But I think from the Dolphins standpoint, organizationally, I think it was a strong move. You cleared off $10 million off your books, not only this year, but going forward. So you clear off an extra $40 million off your books going forward over the next few years. You put yourself in a position that if the Deshaun Watson thing maybe happens, you're a player. You could make it happen. You could make the signing bonuses. You could do whatever you need to. I think the other thing is, in all honesty, I think the other thing is that you can't bring in a guy who's just a decent player and pay him that kind of money, because other teams other free agents look at you like you're the sucker. You know, people go to look for a job, they're going to be like, hey, the Dolphins overpay. The Dolphins overpay because they think they have to overpay. So I might be an $8 million player, but I'm going to ask for 12 and they're going to give it to me. So, yes,
so,
I think it was a good move.
Yeah, it is a good move also on my end. But I think that the Dolphins structured Van Noy's contract because they did not think that Van Ginkel will emerge as fast as he did. So he saw them, or the Dolphins saw Van Ginkel more of a pet project for 1 or 2 seasons. So at least if they have Kyle Van Noy that long, they are settled in that position. But Andrew Van Ginkel just emerged fast. He just developed quickly that Kyle Van Noy eventually became replaceable. So when you have that situation, you go for the person with lesser cap hit, but can deliver the same goods. So that's what happened to Kyle Van Noy. So eventually it became the right move for the Dolphins. So where do I see Kyle Van Noy going? Possibly back to the Patriots. I guess it's still Bill Belichick who understands his style of play the best. And
well, look
at the rest of him.
Just real quick, you just touched on something that's actually really important. Kyle Van Noy served his purpose. The Dolphins were a good defense last year, and Van Ginkel got to learn how to be a professional, and his game improved because somebody like Kyle Van Noy was there. So you created competition inside your roster and used it to actually elevate your own homegrown talent, the guys that you drafted. So when you look at it from a full perspective, having Kyle Van Noy there served its purpose. It's unfortunate that he was cut, but he was there for a reason. The value that you paid for that will pay off exponentially over the next few years in the performance of Van Ginkel, hopefully for the Dolphins. All right, let's go to our last question really quick. Boom.
Okay, so last question comes from Francis of Springfield, Illinois. So, will there be a market for release tight ends Jared Cook and Kyle Rudolph?
Again, this is one of those topics that we touched on earlier in the show. Kyle Rudolph and Jared Cook both cut the last 24 or 36 hours. Both were $7 million salaries. I think both are – I think especially when I look at Jared Cook, I think is like a $5 million player. I think Rudolph might be like a $1.2 million player, something like that. Both of these guys are probably worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 to $25 million. Rudolph, I think, is a little older than Jared Cook. I look at Rudolph as a guy you bring in if you got a young tight end and you want to learn from somebody. I look at Jared Cook as a guy you can bring in to be a starter. Jared Cook could be an Eric Ebron type of guy who jumps from team to team, goes in, becomes a decent weapon that you can use on the outside. Excuse me. Cook is like 6'4", 240 pounds. He's a matchup nightmare when used correctly. He's got decent hands. He runs decent routes. He's really just a big receiver. So I see a market for Jared Cook because he is really what the NFL tight ends are becoming now. Kyle Rudolph, I see as more of an inline tight end, not quite the same kind of weapon, but a really good teammate. Is there a market for both guys? In my opinion, there's a market for both guys. I think that there is I just don't know if there's a market for them that matches their own perceived value. So again, I got paid $7 million last year. I'm not playing for $3 million. That may be the thought process. It would never be mine. I just want to be clear. It would never be mine. If I made $7 million last year and you offered me $3 million to go play football again for a year, I would absolutely do it. I would do it until they wouldn't let me do it anymore. So that would be me. But I guess at some point you have to think to yourself, I have enough money. If you can live your life and say, I can live off of $200,000 a year and I got $25 million, that means you have generational wealth. You have enough money to survive probably the rest of your life spending $200,000 a year, which is not easy. If you own your home and you own your car and everything else. $200K a year is not easy to spend. Take you a long time to spend that money. You'd have a really good life. And you could put the rest of your money into investments and let that money accrue. Maybe live off the interest. It's generational wealth for you and your family for forever. So I think these guys play if they want to play. I don't know. Do you think there's actually a market for these guys?
It depends on what the team looks for in their tight end. I see Jared Cook more of as a receiving tight end, more of an offensive threat, more of a guy who can catch for 6-7 yard passes, like a third down target when you need those yards just to keep the chains going. That's how I see Jared Cook. It's not really that blocking tight end, in my opinion, which is in contrast, Kyle Rudolph. So if you're a team looking for that extra blocker up front, not necessarily a tight end that will catch passes. So if you're a team like, let's say, a Buffalo, you have a lot of receivers already. So you just need that extra blocker up front. Then that's the time you go for a Kyle Rudolph. But if you need a tight end who can flex, who can play as a receiver, who can be that extra target for your quarterback, then you go for someone like a Jared Cook. So it's still based on what you need in your roster.
Yeah, and I think it's how you're going to use them as well. So I would actually, I'm a Steelers fan. I would actually not be upset about cutting Eric Ebron and bringing in Jared Cook. Eric Ebron was okay last year. He dropped a lot of balls. Jared Cook, I think, has a little bit better hands. And the number that I look at that's most important to me when I look at a tight end, especially if he's a receiving tight end, is yards per catch. Last year, Jared Cook was, I believe, almost 14 yards a catch, 13.8 yards a catch. And the year before was like 16.5 yards a catch. Those are huge, astronomical, enormous numbers for a tight end. Tight ends do not normally get receiving yards like that. Some wide receivers don't get receiving yard averages like that. So to know that you have a guy like that can stretch the field, that can get a little bit deep and can make plays for you, Jared Cook to me has the value. That's the guy I want if I have the choice. My name is John Todora. That guy over there he is. That's Lance Fernandez. We are the dream team over here at whatsonsports.com. We invite you to go over to whatsonsports.com and join the $2 Sports Club today. If you don't know how to get there, there's a link that's in the bottom of the description. You guys can jump down there. And by the way, when you join the $2 Sports Club today, you get my brand new book. It's called The Secret to Score Metrics. Guys, it'll change your life. Go over and grab it today over at whatsonsports.com. That's it. That's all. We're out of here.